listening to the Art of Homeschooling podcast, where we help parents cultivate creativity and connection at home. I'm your host, Jean Miller, and here on this podcast, you'll find stories and inspiration to bring you the confidence you need to make homeschooling work for your family. Let's begin. Well, hey there, and welcome to episode 54 here on the podcast. I'm so excited you're here today because we're going to talk about hands-on homeschooling, specifically how to customize the curriculum you may already have by weaving in the lively arts and inviting more engagement. But before we get started, I just want to share with you a new review of the podcast I just received. I so appreciate each and every one of you listening to this podcast. And it just warms my heart hearing from you. And here is what Franny 1912 wrote. He said, so much information for free. I'm part of the Homeschooling with Waldorf community, but I came to Jean's work via this podcast when it first started. Back when I didn't know what I was listening to, but loved the sound of the content. Back when I was deciding what sort of home education journey I was going to go on. Back when I didn't even have a clue what Waldorf was or who was Rudolf Steiner. The podcast has so much quality information that Jean gives away for free, but the masterclasses in her subscription or membership support group are packed with so much more quality content. Cannot recommend this podcast and the membership service enough. Wish I'd done it sooner. Oh, thank you so much. If you, dear listener, are so moved, I would love it if you would leave me a rating and review on your favorite podcast player, wherever you listen to podcasts. That would be fabulous. Thank you. And if you want to show me your appreciation for the podcast, you can buy me a coffee. Isn't that so fun? It's just a way to send me a small donation as a thank you gift. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/Coach Jean. That would be super fun too. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start talking now about how to customize your curriculum. First, I just want to give you permission to customize. I want you to be able to customize the curriculum that you already have. So, permission granted. Do you hear that? You have permission. That's right. You do not have to follow that curriculum exactly as written. You can even create your own so that you can make homeschooling work for you and your family. I know that might sound counterintuitive, but sometimes it's easier to create your own simple plan rather than trying to sort through someone else's somewhat complicated plan. All right, let's start off by talking about hands-on learning. What do I mean by that? Well, hands-on learning engages our kids in the learning, in the experience of learning in so many different ways. I recently read an article on a prominent education website that said this, quote, "We don't have an achievement gap, we have an engagement gap," end quote. Wow. We want engagement for our children, right? That is a huge part of homeschooling and why we're homeschooling, I think, because in some ways it's easier to bring hands-on experiential learning in a homeschool setting when we have fewer number of children than it is in a classroom setting with a larger group. So the best way to increase engagement, right, with our children is through hands-on activities. And in study after study, research shows that hands-on experiences increase student performance and motivation. One study over 20 years ago found that students in activity-based programs performed up to 20% higher than groups using traditional or textbook approaches. So the greatest gains occurred in the areas of creativity, attitude, perception, and logic. This is from a study by Bretterman in 1982. The National Association of Educational Progress, which is known as NAEP, also known as the nation's report card, revealed that students whose teachers conduct hands-on learning activities on a weekly basis outperform their peers by more than 70% at grade level in math and 40% of grade level in science. This is from the U.S. Department of Education in 1999. So what this says to me is bring more hands-on learning, right? Use manipulatives in math and experiments and demonstrations in science. Take lots of field trips. Bring lots of experiential learning to your homeschool, and the lively arts, bring in more of the arts. And that's one of the things that I'm going to talk about more here in just a moment. Hands-on learning really touches on all of these dimensions that I'm going to name now. It's a holistic approach, right? And it touches on the dimensions, learning dimensions, including physical, emotional, cultural, intellectual, and spiritual development of a child. So I want to start with just a short conversation about what curriculum is before we get into how to customize it. Because most new homeschoolers start with the question, which curriculum should I buy? That was me. I was that new homeschooler too, once upon a time. And then they think they're done, right? That the curriculum package will arrive, we'll just begin homeschooling and all will be well. But not so much. Because when the curriculum arrives, we realize we can't do everything that's written inside that curriculum. So we have to start picking and choosing from the curriculum what to keep, what to leave out, when to do the different things. And pretty soon it's kind of confusing and we feel like we're behind and maybe we're not cut out for this homeschooling thing, or maybe we should buy another curriculum. So right off the bat here, I just want to tell you that you get to choose. You get to choose what lessons to do. You get to decide what topics. You get to design the learning plan. You're the leader in your homeschool. And I want to acknowledge from the very beginning here that homeschooling is about way more than what curriculum you buy. So what is curriculum? If you look it up in the dictionary, you'll find a very broad definition, something like a course of study. Or I guess you could say it's your plan for what you'll do each day. But here's what I want you to know. The real curriculum is not that binder you bought, the plan on paper, what you think you're supposed to do, or what you even plan for or think that you're going to do each day. The real curriculum is what happens between you and your child, what actually takes place. And this is the engagement piece I was talking about. I love how this is described in the Waldorf approach. It's an idea that comes from Rudolf Steiner, who was the founder of the first Waldorf school. And you can take this to heart no matter what curriculum you choose or what approach you even follow, because it's holistic and it takes into account all aspects of the human being of a child, all aspects of human development. And that's really our job. Our goal is simply to observe our children and bring them what they need, right? Here's what Rudolf Steiner said. He said, quote, "Our highest endeavor must be to develop free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction to their lives, end quote. Oh my gosh. And this, I see this in my now grown children, right? My kids are in their 20s and 30s, and it's amazing to watch them find that purpose and direction in their lives. And it, I think, all comes from the engagement during the homeschooling years. I like to say that our job as homeschooling parents is to really help our children discover their gifts and then be able to go out and share those gifts with the world. And I think holistic hands-on homeschooling with lots of engaging activities is the very best way to accomplish that. So, Waldorf education, I think you'll find this interesting no matter where you are in your homeschooling journey, just a bit about the elements, the main elements of Waldorf education, because it gives you a little more insight into where I'm coming from. So to me, the three essential elements of hands-on learning, which come out of the Waldorf movement, but really, as I've said, can benefit anyone, are that it's all in this one sentence. We want to provide a developmental approach to learning that incorporates rhythm and the lively arts into all the subjects. A developmental approach that incorporates rhythm and the lively arts into all the subjects. So what do I mean by developmental approach? I'm just going to touch on each of these three things. We want the lessons to match the stages of child development, right? So just as a simple example, young children learn through play. We even have all kinds of white papers and reports and studies and things that have been done by the NAEYC, the National Association of Education for Young Children, and also the AAP, the American Association of Pediatrics, all agree on this. Children learn through play when they're young. And we want to even keep it playful through the elementary years because this helps children engage. Okay, that's developmental approach. And then that keeps going, right? Like the other end of this, so that's the beginning of the learning journey. The other end of the spectrum is that children really, because of brain development, aren't ready for critical thinking and the kinds of learning that we envision that's usually done in elementary school. Most kids aren't ready for this kind of abstract thinking until they're 12 or 14 years old. So that's also a piece of the development that we want to pay attention to. So in those elementary years, what are we bringing? We are bringing lots of hands-on learning and engagement through the arts. All right, next comes daily and weekly rhythm. So what is rhythm? Rhythm is a steady beat, right? It's a flow of activities. It happens all around us. Rhythm does through the seasons, but daily, this flow of activities in particular really helps to give a child a sense of security and knowing what to expect. That we have breakfast and then we all do a chore together and then we sit down for a story and then we go for a walk outside, a nature walk, or we, whatever it might be, you get to create it. But that daily rhythm, we want it to be kind of similar each day. We don't want to be rigid about it. We don't have to have timestamps on all the activities. We simply want there to be a flow and something that our children can come to be able to predict, right? And us too. It makes life easier for us too. Rhythm actually makes life easier. And if you want to hear more about rhythm, I did a whole episode in episode number 3, Relax into Your Homeschooling Rhythm. And you can find it at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 3. Now let's talk about the lively arts, one of my favorite subjects. And this is our third essential element, right, to hands-on holistic homeschooling. You may have heard me say this before. Why the arts? Because they bring us joy and they help make the learning more memorable. So remember that word engagement? That's what we're going for here, right? And there are so many different types of arts, but to me, it's really helpful to ground homeschooling in this idea of the lively arts. It comes out of the Waldorf perspective, but you can use this just as a jumping off point. Steiner encouraged his teachers, those teachers in the first Waldorf school, to bring as many of these, what he called the 7 lively or 8 lively arts, into the lessons, as many as possible. And they are storytelling, movement, music, poetry or speech, drama, painting, drawing, and modeling. Now, storytelling is the key because it can help us to connect with the learning material, right? Stories help us connect with each other, with people from the past. In fact, Steiner said stories are like, this is a quote from him, stories are like communication from soul to soul. So I'm going to give you some tips now. How do you customize your homeschooling curriculum to invite more engagement? Here are some tips, no matter what curriculum you're using. Number 1, find a story to go with whatever you're studying. This could be a fairy tale or a legend from ancient cultures, a biography or autobiography of a key figure in your history or math or even science lesson. Stories can actually deliver the curriculum, right? They set the stage and they can teach in a way that's much more engaging than trying to memorize facts or just read a description of an event, a series of from an event in history. So choose the stories with care, find stories that light you up, and your children will take notice. Stories really do have the power to uplift and teach. And if you want to hear more about that, you can check out episode 16, where I talk with my friend Allison about how stories make great teachers. Just go to artofhomeschooling.com/episode 16. All right, number 2, weave in the arts, but not all at once. These help bring the learning alive and make it more engaging. You might focus on just one at a time and perhaps you decide to paint portraits of the historical figures that you're studying this month, or draw maps of the regions in the story that you're reading. If you want more ideas about the lively arts, you can check out episode 23 of the podcast, weaving the lively arts into our lessons. And that's at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 23. All right. Lastly, you can simply design your own curriculum. This is really the ultimate in customization because you get to decide, right? You could choose just a theme or a lesson block or a single topic for the month. You could pick one of the arts, like I said, to focus on, and then bring new content through stories and living books. This isn't as hard as you might think. You could really just have some fun with your kids. And I strongly encourage you to give this a try. So pick a month, maybe a month in the coming season where you might want to try this out, because it really can be easier than you think. All right, one other podcast episode that I want to recommend to you is called Movement, Games, and Activities for Homeschoolers, because honestly, we can bring hands-on games and activities, learning activities that involve movement, like whole body movement. We can bring that into all the lessons. And I had a great conversation in episode 27 about movement, games, and activities for homeschoolers with Brian Wolf from Waldorf-Ish. His very first teaching job was as a games teacher. So go check out artofhomeschooling.com/episode 27 for even more ideas to keep the learning playful all the way through, right through the elementary years and even high school. All right, before we wrap up, I want to recap by sharing 5 simple steps you can follow to help customize your homeschooling curriculum to invite more engagement. Number 1, embrace the idea of monthly themes or main lesson blocks where you dive deep into one subject for 4 or 5 weeks. Number 2, decide which block topics you'll do when in your homeschooling year. Number 3, choose which of the lively arts and hands-on activities to focus on. Do not try to do them all at once. Number 4, take stock of your current resources and find what else you need, like at the library, or order a few new things. And then number 5, select the resources you'll use. Then all you have to do is dive in. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to see what lands well in terms of inviting our children to engage, and what doesn't land so well. You'll learn something along the way. This can be seriously simple. And believe me, customizing is a game changer. Most of us own more than one curriculum, right? And we need to figure out still how to put a plan together from all of those resources we have. So I like to start with this idea that a purchased curriculum is not the final curriculum. I invite you to think of a purchased curriculum more as reference material on the shelf. It's a collection of ideas and plans that you could choose to use or not, but more than likely, you're going to pick and choose some of it. I want you to remember that the real curriculum is what happens between the teacher and the learner, between you and your child each and every day. Customizing curriculum is freeing, practical, inspiring, genuine, personalized, and empowering. So customize your plan and make it work for you and your kids. As parents, we know what our children need, right? Sometimes it's a little fuzzy, but we just have to slow down enough to observe them and find out what that is. If you need some guidance, here are 2 ways that I can help. 1, join me and a wonderful group of homeschooling parents in Homeschool with Waldorf. The monthly membership is a $37 a month recurring fee, but you can join anytime and cancel anytime. Every month, we have classes, coaching, and community engagement. So you can get your blocks and your frustrations figured out, worked out, and invite more hands-on learning into your homeschool. Find out all the details at artofhomeschooling.com/homeschool with Waldorf. And then the second way I could help is if you're feeling really stuck right now and just need some guidance to help you move forward in your current situation, I offer one-on-one mentor sessions, and the details about that are at artofhomeschooling.com/mentor with Jean. Wishing you all the best as you customize your homeschool curriculum to invite more engagement from your children. If you found this episode helpful and want to say thank you, you can buy me a coffee. Just go to www.buymeacoffee.com/Coach Jean. And lastly, you can find the show notes for this episode at artofhomeschooling.com/episode 54. That's all for today, my friend. But here's what I want you to remember. Rather than perfection, let's focus on connection. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Art of Homeschooling podcast.